The Spurs take on the Indiana Pacers tonight. Hopefully, they'll continue their winning ways.
You are Locked On Spurs, your daily San Antonio Spurs podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Spurs. Right here on the Locked On NBA Network. I am your host, Jeff Garcia, Spurs writer for Kings 5 San Antonio. Glad to have you back. Hey, the Spurs are finally back in town after a long extended road trip, the Rodeo Road Trip. Spurs are back taking on the Indiana Pacers tonight. We're going to look at tonight's game, give a quick preview, then look back at that Rodeo Road Trip where they nearly went winless. They got that W in Utah, where we're going to try our best to look back at that trip and try to find anything that was good. Yes, anything that was good in a Rodeo Road Trip that nearly was a disaster. And we thank you for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every day. As always, we are free and available wherever you get podcasts. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Let's go ahead and bring in our guest. He is Joe Garcia of Two Shots Podcast, the man who loves to shop at Buc-ee's. What'd you get this time?
I don't know, just it's a peanut brittle and some snacks for the kids. But I'm not the only one that likes to shop at Buc-ee's. I remember when I took Jeff that one time, he was almost buying the whole store. You had to put stuff back. Remember, you had to pull over and put some stuff back. I don't need it.
I did. I put back the baseball cap. I was like, what am I buying a Buc-ee's baseball cap for? I put back, I think it was beef jerky. I think because don't they have like a wall of beef jerky?
Yeah, they had a whole bunch.
Yeah, I just put back a lot of stuff. For those of y'all who do not live in Texas, Buc-ee's is, just think of a gas station times 100 with practically a shopping mall connected to it. These things are massive in Texas, and their emblem or their logo is like a little. What is that? Like a gopher? It's a beaver?
It's a beaver.
Okay. It's a beaver, and I'm pretty sure you see the logo, everybody, you know what it is. But Joe, glad to have you back. It's been a while, but I know you've been busy, working hard and providing for your family. But let's go ahead and look at tonight's game: Spurs and Pacers. Joe, hey, the losing streak is over. They take on the Pacers, but it looks like they may go back on their losing ways, Joe. What do you think about tonight's game?
I don't know, man. The Spurs, they win one, and I'm fully expecting them to lose the next couple again. So, enjoy the small moral victories as where you can get them, Spurs fans. But the Pacers are currently 12th in the Eastern Conference at 28-35. They've more than doubled the win total for the San Antonio Spurs. The Spurs are still, I think, collectively in that second to worst record in the NBA. So it goes to show you where the teams are going currently. So I don't think it's going to bode well for the San Antonio Spurs fan faithful. But you're going to have the faction of fan who is actively advocating for the Spurs to lose. So the Spurs winning yesterday upset some Spurs fans because they think it's going to ruin their chances at getting the number 1 overall pick. But
I don't blame them, Joe, because let's look ahead. Okay, so they got the Pacers tonight. Fine. That's probably an L. But the Spurs won against Utah, and currently Houston is dead last in the record. So basically the worst record in the NBA. Then you got those upcoming pair of Houston games. So you got the Spurs winning in Utah, and then Houston that's practically going to gift wrap W's to the Spurs. So, and I get it, Joe. You just got to finish with one of the 3 worst records in the league. I get that. It's equal percentage. But then you got Charlotte, Joe, who lost LaMelo Ball for the season. They're likely to start tanking and losing games too. I'm just afraid the Spurs are going to pick up these little chippy wins in these last games and push them out of the top 3 worst records and then out of the contention for number 1 or number 2 pick. Joe, your thoughts?
I don't think it's going to be that easy. You would think that Houston will all but gift wrap these wins for the San Antonio Spurs, but the Spurs, they are that bad. We've seen them have no consistency, especially like on this Rodeo Road Trip, but we'll get into that kind of stuff. But seeing how bad this team has played as a collective whole, I don't think that anything is just a gimme at this point. I mean, I fully expect them to maybe split with the Rockets, but I highly doubt that they'll win both games. I mean, it might be a bad take, but I'm just being completely honest. And beyond just looking at what they have, as far as the upcoming schedule, you have the Rockets back to back after the Pacers. You have other games that you see them playing here, and most of the other teams they're going to be facing, uh, all pretty much have a lot better records than the San Antonio Spurs and the Nuggets. I mean, come on, man. There's no hope there. Then you're going looking at the Thunder. They don't have any answer for the Thunder. They've shown that. And then you have the Grizzlies, the Mavs. You have the Hawks again, the Pelicans, the Wizards, the Bucks, the Celtics, the Kings, the Warriors, the Suns, the Blazers. And then they finish the season off again facing the Mavericks. The Mavericks at that point should, already be I guess they should know where they're going to be at come the playoffs. So they'll probably be resting players. That one you could say, okay, that might just be a gift wrap for the San Antonio Spurs. But beyond just looking at these two upcoming games with the Rockets that, one of them should be a gift wrap, give me. I don't really see many wins coming in the Spurs' future. It's going to be hard pressed for this team, I think, to even win 3 games to close out the season. That's just me being honest.
Yeah, well, as far as tonight is concerned, the Pacers, they may help Team Tank for those fans that are on that side of the fence. The Pacers have won 2 games in a row on the road, so they're coming in on that 2-game road winning streak. But the Pacers are definitely finding their touch right now. In the last couple of games, they have a higher 3-point percentage than their opponent. They got a higher field goal percentage than their opponent in the last 2 games in this winning streak. This little one they have, the Pacers. So yeah, and I guess Joe, it begins with that Halliburton. That Halliburton, man, he's an all-star. Putting up good numbers. Averaging about 20 points per game in 33 minutes. It's going to be interesting to see the Halliburton and Sohan matchup. I'm interested in seeing that, Joe. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Tyrese Halliburton is going to be playing at a high level. Unfortunately, for San Antonio Spurs fans faithful here, I don't think it's going to bode well for the San Antonio Spurs. I completely see that, the Pacers are probably going to wind up pulling away late in the third or fourth quarter. I think the Spurs might be competitive, a little bit more competitive. They might start trying to tighten things up a little bit. But, I mean, Tyrese Halliburton is just a different caliber player. Unfortunately for the San Antonio Spurs, there's really no player on here that you can say is a bona fide all-star. Let's be honest here. There's no player on this team currently right now in this season that you can say, oh, they're just a bona fide all-star. They deserve to be in the all-star game. It's not an all-star, but say a superstar as well. There's no person on this team that's currently at that status yet. They might be working towards that, but there's no one on this team that can just flat out take over the game, the complexion of a game, and change the outcome of the game. I mean, we've seen Keldon Johnson trying really hard, but he needs some help. So
yeah. He definitely tried. Yeah, he definitely tried in that last game versus Utah, where the Spurs got the W. You saw him wanting the ball, wanting to take over the game, and he kind of got it done. He played through that injury he had late in the game to propel the Spurs to a win. I'm looking at this Pacers team, and it's not just Halliburton. They got guys like Buddy Hield, Benedict Mathurin. I like the guy's a solid rookie. You have Aaron Naismith. Yeah, they got the guy Buddy Hield. So this team can potentially just light up the court tonight out in the AT&T. We're talking with Joe Garcia of Two Shots Podcast right here, looking at tonight's game, Spurs and Pacers. When we get back, we're going to give our predictions about that game tonight, and then look back at the Rodeo Road Trip. We're going to do our best to find any ray of hope, any ray of light in that awful, awful Rodeo Road Trip. It was almost a complete disaster. Unfortunately for the Spurs, they got a win to close out that extended road trip. But before we do that, I want to talk about FanDuel. It's the midway point of the season. It's here. The NBA is winding down. Now is the perfect time for you to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, really easy to use. And then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores to threes drains. You can even make exclusive bets, like two times three, 2 3-pointers scored within the first 3 minutes. Yeah, have fun with it. Get yourself FanDuel Sportsbook app right now. The app even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with same game parlay. So don't miss out on this chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to fanduel.com/lockedon. That's fanduel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. We're back with Joe Garcia right here on Locked On Spurs. T is with Two Shots Podcast. We're looking at tonight's game, Spurs-Pacers, and then looking back at the Rodeo Trip and trying to find any silver lining in an otherwise bad road trip. So, Joe, let's go to wrap up our chat about tonight's game, Spurs-Pacers. Now, look at the other side of the court. That's the Spurs. They beat the Jazz, snapped that 16-game losing streak, 15-47 heading into tonight's contest. If anything, Joe, I look back at that Utah game to close out the road trip, and that's been a long time since I've seen this team play nearly 48 minutes of basketball. Pop applauded them, saying that, yeah, they got it. They got it done, played from wire to wire. Do you think they can duplicate that tonight versus Indiana?
That's I don't really see them playing very consistent. They've shown that the Spurs have shown that they're very inconsistent, and while they might show flashes here and there, it's hard for them to play a full 48 minutes, hence their record, where they only have at this point 15 wins on the season. I just don't see that happening. While they might be competitive for a couple of quarters there, the wheels will fall off come the third or fourth quarter. Unfortunately, there's just no consistency, and I see that trend continuing.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the numbers for the month of February, last month, that is, through 11 games played, they only averaged 110 points per game. I mean, that's nearly their worst month this year. Their worst month is actually in November. They averaged 107.2 points per game. So, you see a decline in production. We know the decline on the defensive end. We've seen it. Doug McDermott joked about it after the win versus Utah, saying that this team needs to be proud of itself because they played defense. He jokes, he goes, something they haven't done in the last few games. The 3-point shooting climbed down a bit, down to 32% for the month of February, heading into the first game in March. Joe, I expect more of the same. I expect another L. And in the chase for the race to the bottom, it's not too bad if you're a fan that wants that number 1 or number 2 pick. So go Indiana. What's your prediction tonight, Joe? What do you think?
Got to go with the Pacers on this one. I just don't think that the Spurs, again, are going to play consistent enough to be able to win the game against the Pacers, which, again, they have almost double the wins that the Spurs have at this time. And just the personnel that's on the actual Pacers roster right now is just, I think, as far as quality goes, it's just a tad better than what the San Antonio Spurs have right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Pacers are going to win tonight. I expect it to be at least maybe a competitive game. You saw a little bit of competitiveness in that game versus Utah where they got the W. I like that. I guess the big thing is, obviously we're even mentioning it, is the high probability that Devin Vassell will return tonight for the Spurs. Pop during the road trip did say that they're projecting for Vassell to come back from injury today versus Indiana. Do you think that gives the team a boost that maybe could get them a W tonight?
I don't think it's going to be enough of a boost. I think what's going to happen is that you're going to see them play more consistent, probably for the first quarter or two. But then again, you got to remember, if Devin Vassell does in fact come back and play against the Pacers, he's going to be on a minutes restriction. So Pop is going to sit him on the bench for long stretches of time. So that's going to kind of mess with the flow of the offense as well. Devin and Keldon are arguably, your 1 and 2. I'm not arguably, but they are your 1 and 2. They're the two best players that the Spurs have. Devin does make the team better, but again, being on a minutes restriction, coming back from injury, getting used to playing within the context of the game again and getting in that game shape, getting in that rhythm, it takes time, So I wouldn't expect that he just comes in and automatically they're going to be inspired and they're going to play so much better for full 48 minutes to get the win. They'll be more competitive, but it's still going to be the same result, another L.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think it'll be a lot competitive. The minute restriction is going to be there for Devin Vassell. Obviously, there could be other guys out. Like, we don't have the injury report as of this recording, but we've seen Trey Jones out for an extended period of time. We saw Malachi Branham get hurt late in the game versus Utah. Keldon came up limp for a while during the game. He played just through it. Who knows if they sit him down? So yeah, injuries are going to come into a factor. But Devin Vassell comes, obviously that'll be great, for the fans, for him to get back on the court. But Joe, sometimes I wonder, is it even worth it at this point? Is it even worth it to bring him out at all?
It is, Jeff, because the thing is, in these losing streaks that the Spurs have had, these long losing streaks, is you don't want the team to form those bad habits, of inconsistent play. You want them to form some type of rhythm, and I think with Devin and being inserted back into the lineup, hopefully they can end the season with some confidence, showing that even though they keep continuing to lose, they can build up some consistency. You don't want them to end the season with just bad habits going into the season at the end of the season. And then in the off season, they work on things and then they play like crap again come the next season. You want them to end it on a high note, showing that, hey, even though we're lost, we played better,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll see. It's interesting that you mentioned that, about Devin Vassell coming back and not really making that much of an impact. You're right. The minute restriction is probably going to do him in, knowing Pop and the coaching staff and the medical staff. But you're not the first person to say this. Say like, I guess, yeah, Devin Vassell's coming back. Great. Like, all right, same old is going to happen. I just find it very, very interesting that you and several other guests before you have said the exact same thing. All right, when we get back, we're going to look back at that Rodeo road trip and try to find any silver linings. And Joe, the part of the game is you cannot say they won the last game. That you cannot use that as a silver lining. So we're going to look at that and much, much more right here on Locked On Spurs. Back with Joe Garcia. He is with Two Shots Podcast. Follow him on Twitter at Two Shots Podcast. Joe, thank goodness the Rodeo road trip is over. They nearly went winless. They won one, and that was out in Utah in that second game versus the Jazz. But Joe, let's going to look back at that stretch of games there. And as you heard it before, you cannot say, well, the right side is they won versus Utah. That's too easy. Okay, so give me your first thing. What is one bright spot in your list of things that you could take away from an otherwise poor Rodeo road trip?
That they almost lost every single game, let's be honest. That only helped your chances get closer to that number one pick. That's the only saving grace that you can find here in this horrid Rodeo road trip. This is probably the worst Rodeo road trip that the Spurs have ever had in franchise history. And it's a bad season. Losing, I think Spurs fans have grown accustomed to it. So losing almost every single game is one of the bright spots to me in a losing season.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that is a bright spot. They maintained they're one of the three worst records in the league. So yay, there's that. So yeah, I agree with you. If you're definitely looking for the number one or number two pick, that's right on the right path. For me, is seeing Jeremy Sohan just be a little bit more assertive. Not afraid to mix it up. He shoved Dunn, the Jazz player. He almost got in a tussle there. He saw him being very assertive in that second game versus the Jazz, really coming into his own. I like what we're seeing. That the free throw shot, one-handed free throw shot is falling down with consistency now. Just really seeing him develop into his own right now. And it's not just him, too. It's Malachi Branham. I think that's been a revelation in this Rodeo road trip, just how much of an offensive threat he can be. So for my first thing are the rookies. Just seeing those two rookies really start coming into their own and finding their ways, getting more assertive, getting used to the game, getting, accustomed to the Spurs system, especially for Branham. Really, I mean, fans are saying he should be considered for the Rookie of the Month award. I mean, that's how much of a big leap he took during the Rodeo road trip. So for me, the first thing would be the rookies. Your thoughts, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is you want to see your younger core get some run, get better, get more consistent, and of course, get a lot more experience in the context of these games. It's only going to help them get a lot better come next season. So that's another bright spot is, with, the losing, at least you're seeing Coach Pop be a little bit more uh, lenient when it comes to giving rookies more playing time because it's a different time, Jeff. I mean, back in the days, Coach Pop would not let a rookie sniff the court. They were delegated to what the G League, but the Spurs just have no choice this season. Just goes to show you the state of the team where Coach Pop is forced to play some of these rookies, and give them hefty minutes. So that's a good thing. It's going to help the Spurs in the long run as they start trying to build and get more consistent and get these rookies more, let's say, minutes on the court and also more experience, much needed experience because they need to find ways to close out games. Let's be honest, and getting out there and mixing it up with the better players in the NBA is going to help them kind of hone their skills.
What would be your second best thing from the Rodeo Road Trip?
I'm going to be honest. I don't really see much beyond just getting those youngins some
Yeah.
minutes here. I mean, you look at everything else that they did on this rodeo road trip, and it was bad. I mean, when you're letting teams blow you out by 20 plus points, you're not being very competitive. You're falling behind early in the first quarter. There's no consistency on defense. There's no communication on the court. The body language is telling you they already feel defeated going into the third and fourth quarter. It was bad, and I know Coach Pop was frustrated and he even voiced his concerns and called the called the squad out, and told them, you need to play with some heart. And he was exactly right. He needs to be able to hold them accountable. But I mean, at the same time, it's like, what do you do? I mean, you can only preach so long, so much. They have to start executing what they're learning. And I mean, it's just been one of those seasons like we were talking about before we even came on this podcast. I think we're all counting the days for this season to go ahead and come to an end. There's 20 games left. It's been a long run. I think we all need to go ahead and have a break and have a collective sigh and just have something to drink. I need some beer. I need a pour of whiskey. It's been that kind of season, Jeff.
Yeah, I feel you. I feel you. Outside of that, Utah went. Excuse me. You could pretty much predict how the team was going to play and whether they're going to win or lose just in the first half alone. You knew it. If they were getting destroyed in the first half, they were not going to have a chance. If they were competitive up to halftime, you knew something was going to happen or the wheels were going to come off in the second half. I mean, that's usually the way it went. Now, the Utah Jazz game / win that was surprising. I didn't expect them to
Enigma.
do that. That was an enigma. I was like, whoa, what's going on here? But nevertheless, that's been their thing this season. But Joe, I'll give you my second best thing out of the Rodeo Road Trip. That is Charles Bassey. And he gets the contract. He's getting minutes now, looking like that bouncy big that the Spurs have been looking for over the last few years. You lost Pirtle via trade. Bassey's coming in, blocking shots, hitting even a little floater, kind of like a set shot, put shot in the paint. Really athletic. I like seeing Bassey getting a lot more minutes in the Rodeo Road Trip. Your thoughts, Joe?
Yeah, that's another thing. You just can't seem to make Spurs fans happy no matter what happens. The Spurs go ahead and extend Charles Bassey. They see something in the young man. It's like, hey, let's go ahead and extend him. And let's be honest, they're not breaking the bank with the young kid.
Right.
And if they need to go ahead and move on from him, it's not really like the team's taking a big hit, but he is showing some promise here within the Spurs system. But yet you still have the faction of fan who's upset that the Spurs went ahead and extended him, even though he is playing, pretty good. So I mean, there's little things that you can look at within this losing season to say, hey, that's a high point. Hey, that might be good for the future of the team. But as a fan, you can't even get excited because as soon as you voice your concern, like, hey, I'm excited that this happened, other fans are going to come for you and be like, well, they shouldn't have extended him. I don't see why they're doing that. Oh man, it's exhausting, Jeff. But I'm glad that they did extend Charles Bassey. That's a high point of the season.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely good to see. And also to a local kid, out of St. Anthony High School in San Antonio. So again, really good news. But hey, look, we did it, Joe. We actually found some silver linings in a very, very bad rodeo road trip.
It
You
was
see,
hard. It was hard.
yeah, these Spurs fans, it wasn't a complete loss. I mean, look, you're still in the tank mode. You're still within those three worst records, and you got to see the rookies develop, Branham and Bassey, as Joe mentioned. Salvaging it with the win versus Utah. But yeah, at least it's over, Joe. At least it's over. The season is starting to wind down. Hey, we're done talking. We want to hear from you. What do you think about tonight's game, Spurs-Pacers? Do you disagree with Joe and I? You think the Spurs actually get their second straight win? Could that happen tonight? Back in San Antonio, that'd be great, but something tells me that's probably not going to happen. And can you find anything else that was a silver lining in the Rodeo road trip? You can let us know. Joe, tell everybody about Two Shots Podcast.
Yeah, we're going to be recording a new episode tonight, so look for that to drop sometime tomorrow, possibly in the morning. And it's going to be fun to be talking about, not only San Antonio Spurs basketball, but a little bit of some other topics here, maybe some movies, because I did see a screener of Creed 3, and also talk about the win for our very own San Antonio Brahmas, who got a much needed first victory of the season over this past weekend.
Yeah, how are the Brahmas doing? I know it's just 2 games, and I tried to tune into
1-1,
game.
Jeff. They're 1-1.
I heard that first game was a horrible ending. Like they just blew it.
It has more to do with the rules too. It's really easy for teams to get back into the games when they're falling behind. In this current XFL league, it is what it is. I mean, unfortunately for the Brahmas, they just didn't execute as far as closing out the game the way they should have, and St. Louis came roaring right back and kind of took that win from them. But good recovery for the Brahmas as they went ahead and, like I said, got that much needed first victory of the season over the past weekend.
And for those who don't know, the XFL is I guess what they call it? Semi-pro league. You want to say it like that, Joe?
Yeah, they have
pro league.
Yeah, they have some players that were on practice squads on the NFL, and maybe even some that, as particular like the Rock had said, there was one particular quarterback who actually gave up being a backup QB at the NFL level because he wanted to stay closer to home and play in front of his kids. So, you have stories like that. So you have a lot of semi-pro players in this league. So it's going to be pretty good.
All right. Well, check it out over at Two Shots Podcast. Joe is on the case covering the Brahmas and so many other sports out in San Antonio and, of course, outside of the state. And, subscribe to Locked On Spurs wherever you get your favorite podcast, Google Play, Stitcher, iTunes. And check out Locked On Game to Game, every NBA recap, every NBA game stat, everything you need to know. Locked On Game to Game NBA is available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, just like Locked On Spurs, Odyssey app, YouTube, iHeart, and the Kens 5 Plus app. And, of course, the YouTube page. So, for Joe Garcia, I am Jeff Garcia. We're putting a lock on this episode of Locked On Spurs.